New Orleans Saints, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, recap and reaction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just a few short hours since I was in the Superdome watching the Buccaneers and the Saints. Let's start with the positives, shall we? Let's go ahead with the positives. It was a really nice day in New Orleans. Very nice weather. Not a cloud in the sky. Okay, let's move on to the negatives. Holy shit. What was that? Wow. Where to even begin? Let's unpack this whole thing. The first thing we got to talk about is the same thing we talked about after Philadelphia, and the same thing we talked about after Atlanta, and the same thing we talked about after Kansas City, and it's going to be the same thing we talk about today. You cannot win in the NFL. Win. You can't even be an average team in the NFL. Average. You can't even be a below average team in the NFL and give up 8.2 yards per play. We gave up 7.9 yards per rush. Now, we weren't playing LaDainian Tomlinson. We weren't playing peak Barry Sanders. We were playing against Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker, 14 carries, 136 yards for a 9.7 yards per carry. Sean Tucker, coming into this game, had 30 yards rushing in his entire NFL career. He averaged 1.8 yards per carry in his career. 1.8, 30 yards. He faces the Saints, 136 on 14 carries for 9.7 yards per carry. What's going on here? What's going on? The Buccaneers, 51 points, 594 yards of offense, 31 first downs. If they would have said, you know what, we're not playing in the first half. On offense, we're just going to punt. We're just going to punt on offense in the first half. We're only going to play on offense in the second half. The game would be in overtime right now. Just nothing from us in the second half. They scored 27, 51 points, 72 total plays. Just despicable. Turnover battle, the same, 3-3. Possession, they had 10 more minutes of possession. Horrible from the defense. Horrible. This is not what was promised. What was promised was top 10 defense, top 5 defense at the high mark, best defense in the NFL, possibly. This is not even close to an average defense. This isn't even close to a below average defense. The New Orleans Saints are currently giving up the most yards per game in the NFL. We are all the way down here. We're giving up 395.8 yards per game in the NFL. That is worse than the Jaguars. That is worse than the Colts. That is worse than the Cardinals. That is worse than the Panthers. Markedly worse than the Panthers. Worse than the Bengals. Worse than the Patriots. Worse than the Commanders. Now, that's problematic because we have a defensive coordinator as our head coach. We have a defensive head coach. We have a head coach who the only reason he's around is to fix the defense or to make sure the defense is viable. And we have not only a bad defense, we have the worst defense in the NFL. The worst defense right now. Yards per game. Nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's right there on paper. We get to watch it every single week. If you look at this, again, against the Bucs, 8.2 yards per play. Oh, my God. What was it? 7.9 yards per rush. If we go to, let's just go to some other weeks. Let's go to the Chiefs game. As much as I don't want to relive this. 5.8 yards per play. Okay, sweet. So 5.8 yards per play against the Chiefs. Against the Falcons, we were at 6.2 yards per play. Okay, sweet. Good. This is nice. Against the Eagles, 6.9. Sweet. You can't win like that. You cannot win like that defensively in the NFL. I mean, and it begs the question. You got to say it. You got to ask the question. If that is the case, if we have an all-time bad defense, if we have the worst defense in the NFL, what is Dennis Allen doing? what is Dennis Allen doing here? Get rid of him. Fire him. Move on from him. Do I think Loomis will fire him midseason? Probably not. Caveat, if we see what we saw today, Thursday, if Bo Nix, who currently has, I was just watching this game, Bo Nix currently has, he is 4 for 14 for 27 yards for 1.9 for a 1.9 average. If Bo Nix and this offense lights us up on Thursday, Allen probably does get fired midseason. It is that bad. Okay. Now, just so happens that the worst, most opponent yards per game in a team by a team in a season was the New Orleans Saints. In 2012, we gave up 440 yards per game. Just in case you're wondering how close we are to that, we're about 45 yards away from being the worst defense as far as the yards per game in the NFL history. This defensive coordinator was Steve Spagnuolo, who a lot of people were saying we should hire after the Chiefs game. But after Steve Spagnuolo did this, he got fired, and Rob Ryan took over the defense. So I would assume that if Dennis Allen keeps this up, he will get fired as well. Mike Triplett on his Twitter, he talked about this a little bit. Buccaneers now to 530. Let's see. Saints defense has now allowed more than 1,000 yards this week. 460 at KC, 569 and counting today. There would still be about 30 more yards there. In 6 days, think about that. In 6 days, they gave up more than 1,000 combined yards. The 2024 Saints are the first team since the 1950 Colts to intercept 3 passes, score 27 points, and lose a game by 24 or more. That is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable to do. I was sitting in the stands, and I leaned over and I said, hey, if I would have told you we scored 27 points today, what would you have thought? Would you have thought we won? And everyone was like, yeah, yes. LOL, we lost by 24, more than 24. Quick checking. Last time the Saints gave up 51 points, 2012. Again, that's that season where Spagnuolo had us as the worst defense ever. He gets fired. Last time they gave up 594 yards, 2004. Cool 20 years ago. Last time they gave up 277 rushing yards was 2000 to the Broncos, which I'm assuming is Terrell Davis. It might be a little after Terrell Davis. But still, it wasn't to Sean Tucker. Okay? I'm sure the Broncos running back in 2000 was better than Sean Tucker. It's disgusting. And it's I don't understand it. And this is what the real story is. The real story is the defense. The real story is what Dennis Allen has done to this defense. What any of these players, like what these players have done to the defense. If you look at the tackles, look at our tackles. Who's making all of our tackles? Jordan Howden, Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, Jonathan Abram, Alontae Taylor. Why? Because Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving and whoever else are 7-8 yards down the field before they're getting touched. Crazy numbers here. Now, let's talk about the other side of the ball, and then we'll go back to the defense and Dennis Allen. I thought Rattler was fine. I thought Rattler was okay, serviceable, C-, however you want to phrase it. He was in a weird situation where he's playing in a 17-point deficit, and then all of a sudden he's playing with the lead, and then all of a sudden he's playing down 24 points. So it's like he had some crazy game scripts. I thought overall Rattler was pretty good. He made some bad throws. He made some good throws. He moved around in the pocket well at times. He held on to the ball and got sacked at times. He's a rookie. It is what it is. I would give him a C- if I was grading on a curve. Will a statue be built for him outside of the Superdome after this game? No, it will not. Should we cut him? No, we should not. So somewhere in the middle there, he'll start Thursday, and we'll see what happens. But the rest of so Chris Olave goes down with a concussion. My apologies if anyone took Chris Olave over 4.5 receptions that we gave out on our betting preview. If you missed that show, though, you cost yourself quite a little bit of money, because we also gave out Bucky Irving rushing yards. That hit easily. We gave out Chris Godwin, all of his receptions, which he went absolutely ballistic. So winners across, we had the game script. Easy. We had the game script easy. We gave out Baker Mayfield over 8.5 longest rush. I mean, we were all over the place with what we were doing. So Kate Otten, we had him unders. We were talking about how the Saints were going to cover the tight ends. Nailed all that. So hopefully everybody watched that video, did what you had to do. But Chris Olave goes down, okay? So we're out there. Our starters, like think about the Saints, think about the roster, think about the starters. We're out there with Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Jordan Mims, Cedric Wilson Jr., and our offensive line consists of Connor McGovern, who wasn't even in the state 10 days ago, Nick Saldiveri, Landon Young. Like at one point, I was thinking, well, it's kind of a blowout. They'll probably put the backups in. Joke's on me because the backups started the game. We are playing with backups. In most cases, we're playing with second string, third string, fourth string players. We're playing with third string, fourth string safeties. We're playing with third string linebackers. We're playing with third string, fourth string offensive linemen. We're playing with third string, fourth team wide receivers. Insane the injury situation that's happened to the Saints. So if offensively you are looking at this team and you're like, man, I'm a little confused of why we're not playing great offensively. Are you? Because we're playing with a roster that wouldn't have made the preseason lineup. This roster right here is worse than the rosters we saw in the preseason. So the offense isn't good, or we can't do this offensively. Like, yeah, obviously. At some point, injuries catch up to you. At some point, when you're down 7 starters, it is what it is. We're down 3 offensive linemen. We're down Taysom. We're down Chris Olave. What are you gonna do? Like at some point, it's just you got to look around and say, like, okay, this is a pretty weak roster. We're down Derek Carr, obviously. Like you're down 6-ish starters on offense. Yeah, the offense is going to struggle. It is what it is. I don't put a lot of stock into that. Like, I don't expect this offense. If you would have told me coming into the season, your 3 wide receivers are going to be Rashid Shaheed, Mason Tipton, and Bub Means, I would have said it's going to be a long, long season. A long season. You don't win the division. You don't win, 11 games, 12 games with a combination of Jordan Mims, Cedric Wilson, Bub Means, Mason Tipton, and Rashid Shaheed. That doesn't work out. There was one play where we did a play action to Jordan Mims and tried to hit Bub Means on a dig route in the middle of the field. And I'm sitting here watching the play, and really think about it, ladies and gentlemen. We're watching, it's week 6. We're watching Spencer Rattler do a play action to Jordan Mims to try and hit Bub Means across the middle, while Connor McGovern, who wasn't even on the roster 2 weeks ago, is the center. Next to him is Nick Saldiveri, and next to him is Landon Young. Like, when you really take a step back and look at that picture right there, it's like, okay, this is not good, right? Like this is a bad situation right here. So offensively, whatever. Now, I want to make this very clear. The Doomers were not right. Like I'm seeing a lot of, and which is crazy that we're all rooting for the same team, but Doomers are out there acting like they've been right this whole time. The Doomers were not right. The Doomers, before the season, said that this team is the worst team in the NFL. This team is bad. This team is garbage, whatever. That same team goes out 2-0. That team looks great. That team numerically, metric-wise, whatever, flying. And then injuries piled up, and then whatever it is, what it is. It's insane that those same Doomers are looking at a team of Spencer Rattler, Bub Means, Cedric Wilson, Rashid Shaheed, Landon Young, Nick Saldiveri, and Connor McGovern, and being like, see, I told you. So unless you had some kind of fortune ball or whatever they're called, and you can see the future, what the hell are those things called? The little foggy glass ball that witches looked in and told the future. It'll come to me. Not a magic 8 ball. Something else. But unless you could see into the future and forecast that we were going to lose 60% of our starting offensive roster, then the doomers were not right. Now let's shift back to Allen. Okay? Let's shift back to Dennis Allen. So what happens now? All right? Because here's the deal. We're 2-4. We're staring at 2-5 if we lose to the Broncos. What do? What does the future look like? I think the future looks like you not probably, but you fire Dennis Allen. I would keep Kubiak and Janoko. I would keep the offensive staff. I think they've done good enough at times. I'm not super happy with some of the play calls from Kubiak today, but at the same time, I'm looking at Bub Means, Cedric Wilson, Mason Tipton, Jordan Mims, and Spencer Rattler on top of the offensive line. Okay, whatever. I'll give you a break. So I'd hold on to the offensive staff. So defensively, you need someone to come in and set up the defense because you're going to fire the entire defensive staff on top of your head coach. So you need somebody who can be a head coach first and foremost. You need someone who can be a man manager, someone who can be a culture builder, someone who has been a head coach, someone who could come in and take control of the locker room. I think that's Mike Vrabel. It's not Bill Belichick because Bill Belichick wants to be a GM. That's the whole reason that he didn't get the job in Atlanta. He's not going to have GM powers as long as Mickey Loomis is here. And spoiler alert, as long as Gail Benson is here, Mickey Loomis is going to be here. So Belichick's not going to work. I think Vrabel's a perfect fit. Vrabel's a culture builder. Vrabel has won before. Vrabel is a man manager. Oh, and Vrabel has been a defensive coordinator. So I think he fits perfect. So I hope Mike Vrabel is the next head coach of the Saints. He is the first person I would make the call to. The next step is this roster. Now, the Saints are in a unique situation because the Saints are built to never rebuild. They're built to always be relevant. They're built to never rebuild. They're built to just be good year in and year out and then try and catch lightning in a bottle and be a Super Bowl team. Like that's the whole plan. The plan is bad years, you win 8 games, 9 games. Good years, you win 12 games, 13 games. See what happens. It's basically the plan. Well, that's not the case anymore because with all these injuries, it's looking like we're not going to do that. We're not going to be a 9-win, 10-win, 11-win team. So if we're not, and you fire Allen, there's no reason to keep the Alvin Kamaras even though Alvin's not on a contract, so he really doesn't matter. But there's no reason to keep the DeMario Davises. There's no reason to keep the Tyrann Matthews. There's no reason to keep Cam Jordan and some of these expensive contracts of these older players. So more than likely, you will have to rebuild. Like if you're going to do all the stuff we're talking about, you probably do have to rebuild, and you're rebuilding around some combination of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Spencer Rattler on offense, unless you have like a super high draft pick and you decide to go quarterback, but that's probably what you keep on offense. You get out of Carr's contract, Carr's gone. You're not rebuilding with a 34-year-old quarterback on the third year of his 4-year deal, so Carr will be gone. Defensively, you're completely rebuilding because you have a horrible defense, but you're also getting a new defensive scheme, which means different players, obviously, to fit that scheme, and you're also having to get rid of contracts. So you're basically keeping Brian Brzee, you keep Marshawn Lattimore, not much else because Paulson Adebo is a free agent. Carl Granderson, I guess. You have Granderson, Kool-Aid, Alante, and that's really kind of it. And then everyone else, you're just kind of piecing together and figuring out like who fits. But you're trying to upgrade at safety. You're trying to upgrade and fill spots. Like there's a good chance that next year could be pretty close to a full-scale rebuild if this doesn't get better quick. And it's hard to imagine it gets better quick because offensively, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Defensively, it is. Defensively, we are knocking on heaven's door of being the worst defense yards per game wise in NFL history. And when you have an offense that's hurt, injured, banged up. Spoiler alert, Chris Olave is not going to play Thursday. He has a concussion on Sunday. So you're going into a game where you're playing the Broncos, who have arguably the best defense in the NFL, arguably the best pass defense in the NFL, and you're rolling into that game with Rashid Shaheed, Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson, and Bub Means. Probably not going to be good. We can't run the football because we have 3 offensive linemen missing, so can't imagine that's going to go great either. So, I mean, you're staring down. You're staring down 2-5, and then are you confident you're going to go on the road and beat the Chargers? I mean, your best case scenario, absolute best case scenario, obviously, is you win both these games. But I think best case scenario, like realistically, is you split them. You beat the Broncos, lose to the Chargers. So you're still 3-5. You know, worst case, you're 2-6. You know, if you're 2-6, 3-6 here, I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels like, I'm not going to lie, it kind of feels like a lost season. Like, it kind of feels like one of those things where it's a perfect storm against us. There's not much we can do, and it's just kind of a lost season. And we are not the kind of franchise that can have a lost season because of the way we structure contracts and all of that. So, you know, I mean, the bad news is that when you look at these box scores, this game right here, we got absolutely dominated. Like, no way else to put it. You give up 8.2 yards per play. You lose the yards per play battle by almost 4 yards. You give up 600 yards of offense to your 300. You give up 31 first downs. You give up 8 yards per rush. That is horrific. Then you go to the Eagles game. Very similar. You get beat by yards per play by almost 3 yards per play. You give up 500 yards of offense to your 219. You give up 20 first downs. You give up 6.9 yards per rush. Very similar, right? You go to Kansas City. And my voice is starting to go. I was doing some screaming in the dome. In that first half, I was doing some screaming. Kansas City. We lose the total yards by over 200. Yards per play, we lose 5.8 to 4.3. We give up rushing yards, only 3.6 yards per rush. Shocking. And we lose the time of possession by 20 minutes. Like, these games, we are getting destroyed. It's not like, oh, man, we're kind of losing. Ah, man, shucks, we're getting kind of unlucky here. No, absolutely not. We are not getting unlucky. We are getting absolutely dog walked in these games. I'll tell you this too. While we're talking about this, you couldn't script a worse 4 games as a Saints fan. You couldn't script a worse, just as a Saints fan, to watch us lose that Eagles game 15-12. You know, the way that we lost that game with the Dallas Goedert and all that stuff. Then the Falcons game, the way that we lost that game, the muff punt, the 58-yard field goal from Koo, the pass interference. Then the Chiefs game, Monday Night Football, get completely dominated from start to finish. Then the Buccaneers game, you go down 17 immediately. Then you get all the momentum back. You go up. You're winning the game. And then you give up 27 unanswered points in the second half and 600 yards of offense to lose 51-27. Like, those 4 weeks, on top of the injuries, on top of you lose Derek Carr, you lose Chris Olave, you lose Taysom Hill, you lose Pete Werner, you lose DeMario Davis, you lose Tyrann Mathieu, you lose all these players. Like, the fact that all this is happening before and after all these weeks, it is crazy, the season the Saints are having. It is brutal as a fan to sit back and watch these games week in, week out. Mickey is not going to fire Dennis in between the Bucs game and the Broncos game. So not a conversation. If the Saints fall to the Broncos on Thursday night, and if it's embarrassing, especially defensively, that is when we will have our first real conversation of, does Mickey fire Dennis now? Does he fire him right now? Does he do something? Does he change something up? I think it's a real possibility if they get smoked against Denver. But, you know. It's tough times, ladies and gentlemen. It's tough times. It's a really unique season because it's funny because the reason that the Doomers said we were going to be bad was because of our offense, right? Like the reason the Doomers said we were going to be bad was, oh, we don't believe in Carr. We think Carr sucks. We think whatever, it is what it is. No one ever was like, we think the Saints are going to be bad because the defense is going to be horrible. No one ever said that. And that is the reason we are bad. The reason we are bad right now is because of this defense. Again, we are the worst defense in the NFL yards per play. Or yards per game. 32. 32 out of 32. We are consistently, in multiple games this year, have given up the go-ahead touchdown or field goal because we couldn't get a stop. We cannot tackle. What the hell has happened to the tackling? I saw something on Twitter where they were like, well, yeah, I mean, we can say what we want, but they got to tackle better. The guy who is teaching the tackling is the head coach. I know this isn't Pee Wee football, but the defensive coordinator is directly responsible for the tackling. I know these are professional athletes. They don't need to be taught to tackle, but even more evidence of, hey, Dennis, bruv, what are you doing? Like, Dennis, I'm starting to be confused here of what you're even doing on this roster, Dennis. So it is what it is. I mean, what else are you gonna say, ladies and gentlemen? So, but that's enough of the rant or whatever you want to call this from me. Get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought about the game, what you think about the season, the future, what we're looking at here. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a beautiful Sunday. And it's just a difficult time. It's a difficult time to be a Saints fan, no doubt about it, because the team is just on one side of the ball, they're hurt. On the other side of the ball, they're disappointing. And that's a tough combination. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video.